Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a sci-fi horror movie called Life. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens aboard the International Space Station, or ISS, where a team of astronauts prepare for a crucial mission. It turns out a satellite capsule named Pilgrim was returning back to Earth after years of research on Mars. It was carrying soil samples from the planet that might confirm the existence of alien life. Unfortunately, the Pilgrim got damaged by asteroids and ended up veering off its course. Now, the crew of the ISS must intercept the Pilgrim and retrieve the sample. Engineer Rory Adams is tasked with operating the station's mechanical arm to catch the oncoming satellite. His colleagues suit him up for a spacewalk, while the rest of the crew rushes to their places. After a while, Rory floats outside and begins preparations to catch the Pilgrim, but the satellite comes at great speed and collides with the arm, causing the whole station to shake. This worries the entire crew, and they believe that something went wrong, but thankfully it turns out that Rory has successfully caught the satellite, and he didn't even need Wolverine's help to do it. Afterwards, ISS astrobiologist Dr. Hugh Derry carefully begins testing the sample. He is pleased to discover an almost fossilized single-cell organism in the soil. He mimics the atmosphere from Proterozoic Earth by adding a growth hormone onto the petri dish that contains the creature. The crew then watches on as the organism starts moving, essentially confirming that they have found proof of life outside of Earth. Soon the news outlets on Earth are covering this amazing discovery. The crew appears on national TV to explain their research and how everything works inside the ISS. Meanwhile, a particular school has been given the honor to choose a name for the organism. The kids decide to name it Calvin, while a huge crowd on the streets celebrate the discovery. Sometime later, another crew member, Dr. Miranda, checks on a guy named David as she is concerned about his health. He has been in the station for 473 days, the second longest amount of time anyone has spent in space. His atrophy is accelerated, and he's close to his radiation limit. However, David says he previously worked as a military doctor and prefers to serve out in space than in an active war zone. The next day, Hugh discovers that Calvin has quickly grown, and now its body consists of hundreds of cells that are developing a neural network. Each of these cells can perform functions independently, which means that each cell is simultaneously a muscle cell, a nerve cell, and a photoreceptor cell. Hugh also notices that Calvin is developing appendages, so he gently pokes it. This causes the cells to move and take interesting shapes. Later, while the crew has dinner, systems engineer Murakami watches a live stream of his wife giving birth to his daughter. Gross. The crew congratulates him, and ISS mission commander Kat Golovkina even gifts him a book so he can do story time through video calls. After dinner, David uses a special software to check his body for any potential problems, while Hugh checks on Calvin. The little creature is still small, but has a proper body now and is able to climb Hugh's finger. Hugh contemplates putting his penis in there next, but opts not to. For now. A few weeks later, the crew is shocked to suddenly hear an alarm coming from the lab. Rory rushes inside and quickly takes care of the malfunction that triggered the alarm. After the problem has been fixed, Hugh admits that he must have overseen something that caused the problem. So, Rory and Miranda tell him to be careful, reminding that they don't know what kind of creature they're dealing with. A few more days pass by and Calvin becomes completely inactive. The crew thinks it may have gone into hibernation after the change of air pressure caused by the malfunction. Miranda is relieved to see this because Calvin had been growing too fast for her liking. While the creature is inactive, the crew reinforces the safety in the lab, making sure it's sealed off at all times. In the meantime, Miranda and Hugh have a discussion about the creature's hibernation. The latter eventually decides to stimulate Calvin with a very low voltage of electricity to see if it'll wake up. He then heads to the lab alone, seals the door behind him, and applies low voltage shock to the creature. To his surprise, Calvin jolts awake and quickly jumps onto his hand. The creature then breaks the electric wand with relative ease. Hugh tries pulling his hand out of the box where the creature's kept, but Calvin is incredibly strong for its size. Things get even worse as Calvin starts squeezing so hard that Hugh's hand gets crushed into disturbing shapes. The crew, who has been watching all of this, wants to enter the lab to help, but Miranda refuses because it would put several other members in danger. Inside the lab, Calvin yanks Hugh's hand so hard that he hits his head on the box and passes out. It finally lets go of him, and the crew realizes how messy his hand has become. Following this, this, the creature displays extraordinary intelligence. By using the broken electric wand to break out of its enclosure, it immediately goes after a rat placed in the lab for testing and devours it in just a few seconds. While Calvin is distracted with its meal, Rory uses the chance to enter the lab. He grabs Hugh's unconscious body and passes it to his crew on the other side of the door. However, the creature suddenly jumps on Rory's leg, which forces the others to seal the lab again. A desperate Commander Cat then gives permission to kill the creature, so Rory grabs the incinerator and tries burning it, but no matter how many times he manages to hit the creature with the flames, it's never enough to kill it. Shortly after, the flames start getting smaller as the incinerator runs out of fuel. The creature takes this opportunity to swoop inside Rory's mouth and slowly kill him from the inside, shocking everyone. To make matters worse, the incinerator also floats away and triggers the fire alarm. This causes the suppressant gas to fill the lab. Calvin uses this chance to come out of Rory's dead body, and its size has become 10 times larger. The crew is shocked at this and rushes to close all the gas valves. Unfortunately, Calvin is faster, and it squeezes through one of the holes to escape. Afterwards, the team wraps up Rory's body, and Kat sends a distress call to NASA, but Murakami soon discovers that all the communication devices in the ISS aren't working. He deduces that the transmitter has failed, so they have to go outside to fix it and resume communication. As the ISS's mission commander, Kat takes the responsibility and immediately suits up to go on a spacewalk. She soon reaches the transmitter and discovers that it's overheated. She then opens the coolant chamber only to find it empty, which means Calvin must have eaten it. At this moment, the alien comes out of the chamber and attaches itself to Kat's suit, looking for a way inside. It is much bigger now, but the high-tech suit still manages to hold on. Meanwhile, Kat hurriedly closes the valve and rushes back to the airlock, but as she moves, she discovers there's a liquid in her suit because Calvin has damaged the coolant tube. The liquid makes it impossible to see, so she has no choice but to jump to reach the airlock faster. Unfortunately, the danger is not averted yet, as Kat's helmet is quickly filling with water. She realizes that she will drown in her suit before making it into the ISS. Therefore, Kat decides to do something drastic. She will unalive herself outside the station so that the creature attached to her suit is also forced to float in space and eventually die out. Kat then grabs the airlock's lever so that the others can't open it from inside. A few seconds later, she drowns, and the crew has to watch her lifeless body float away. At least her sacrifice was for a reason, right? Wrong. Unfortunately, Calvin catches onto the plan and jumps on top of the station before the body goes too far away. The crew mourns for their commander until Hugh reminds everyone they need to do something to keep the alien out of the ship. Since the thrusters are the only way in, they monitor the temperature sensors to keep track of Calvin. Whenever the alien comes close to a thruster, Murakami turns it on to try to blast it away, but all the continuous blasting causes the station to shake and veer off course. This forces Murakami to use the remaining fuel to put the station back into orbit, allowing the creature to sneak inside again. Afterwards, Hugh proposes a theory. Calvin's species must have dominated Mars for millions of years, but it went into hibernation when the atmosphere of the planet collapsed. He thinks they should simulate that same lack of atmosphere to force Calvin back into inactivity. So, the crew retreats to a capsule, sealing themselves off before expelling the oxygen from the rest of the station. While they work on adding extra layers of sealing, Hugh is startled by something in the shadows and immediately starts feeling unwell. Miranda tries checking on him, but he brushes away her concerns and swears he's fine. For the next few hours, the crew can only anxiously wait around. They grieve for their lost friends, and Hugh blames himself for what happened. David consoles him by saying it was a team decision to take Calvin on the ship. In response, Hugh points out that the creature is simply trying to survive, and to do so, it must feed. After saying this, he suddenly passes out, and the computers indicate that his vitals are dropping. This sends everyone into a state of panic, and as they rush to help him, they notice something moving on his leg. They unzip the suit and are greeted by a horrendous sight. Calvin is feeding on the leg. Miranda tries using the defibrillator to shock it, but this only makes the alien float up and show how much its body has evolved. Terrified, the group starts running in different directions, making them more vulnerable. Murakami is forced to hide inside a sleeping pod, and the creature attempts to break it, but the metallic structure holds on, causing the alien to get bored and eventually leave. Meanwhile, David and Miranda return to Hugh, who is now conscious but on the verge of death. He asks his friends to lift him so he can feel what floating is like one last time, but as soon as they oblige, he dies. Later, while the duo grieves, they see a beeping light on the screen. They suddenly realize that Calvin has swallowed Hugh's tracker. This gives them an opportunity to know its position and create a plan accordingly. Therefore, they leave Hugh's body in the lab as bait, and Calvin eventually finds it. The alien begins devouring the body, while the duo closes the door to lock it inside. They They then purge the oxygen out of the lab to suffocate the alien, but the process takes a long time. Right then, the computer announces that a Shoyu shuttle is approaching the ISS. David realizes that Kat's message to NASA did in fact reach Earth. However, the shuttle starts bumping against the station instead of docking with it like it's supposed to under normal conditions. Miranda then reveals that the Shoyu isn't here to save them. It has come to push them into deep space, so Calvin can't reach Earth. In the sleeping chamber, Murakami also hears the announcement regarding the approaching shuttle. He thinks they're being rescued, so he gets out of the pod and makes his way towards the docking area. There, he opens the hatch to reach the Shoyu shuttle, unaware that Calvin is snuck behind him. Miranda and David rush to try to warn him of the truth, but it's too late. Murakami is salami. The Shoyu has already pushed the ISS away and begins to leave, but since the hatch in the docking area between the shuttle and the ISS is open, the atmosphere inside the station starts decompressing. This causes everything in the vicinity, including Murakami and Calvin, to almost be sucked into space. Miranda grabs her colleague's hand and tries to pull him back in, but the alien grabs onto Murakami's arm and starts climbing to his hand. Realizing the imminent danger, Murakami selflessly lets go of Miranda to stop Calvin from reaching her. He is then sucked into space, but once again, the stubborn creature manages to cling to the station. It tries to grab onto Miranda, but she pushes it away with a nearby tool. She then joins David and they make their way back inside before closing the door behind them. In the aftermath, the duo looks out the window only to discover that the ISS is falling apart. The broken parts are crashing against each other, creating further destruction. Next, David checks the computer and discovers that the temperature and oxygen are dropping fast. He also notices that all this destructive chaos has pushed the station towards Earth. They now have about 30 minutes before they re-enter the planet's atmosphere. Unfortunately, there's no way they can survive re-entry, and they can't reach the escape pods either without Calvin attacking them. As the duo comes to terms with their destiny, David gets an idea. Since Calvin is searching for oxygen, they could lure it into an escape pod using oxygen candles. David wants to launch himself alongside the alien into deep space in that pod. That would give Miranda the chance to reach a different pod and land on Earth safely. She doesn't like the idea of a sacrifice, but David reminds her what he had said earlier. He prefers space over Earth. He'll take an alien over a mob of angry T-Swift fans any day. Following this, David goes out into the corridors and begins dropping oxygen candles. As he makes his way to the escape pod, Calvin soon shows up and starts following the human like a dog. At this time, David has already reached the pod, which lures Calvin towards him. It then hugs the suit tightly, and David uses the opportunity to close the pod's hatch. Elsewhere, Miranda notices this and immediately rushes out to reach the other pod. Both the capsules soon disconnect from the station and fly away in opposite directions. However, the debris hits them both and causes the escape pods to start malfunctioning. While Miranda struggles with her controls, David tries his best to keep his pod's trajectory. On the other hand, Calvin wraps his tentacles on David's arms, causing the human to scream in pain. The scene then shifts, and a pod is seen flying off into deep space, while the other lands on Earth in the middle of an ocean. Fishing boats soon surround the fallen pod to help the astronaut inside, but in a shocking twist, it is revealed that David has made it to Earth, and Miranda is lost in space. This means that Calvin now has a whole planet to feed on. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.